Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the second Flexible Space Association webinar. As you can see, we are joined by Sallie Maskrey and Jonathan Weinbrenn. Unfortunately, we're having some technical issues with Jonathan at the moment, who can't hear us, so he may need to drop off. And if so, we'll carry on chatting to Sallie. So Sallie is MD of Portal Business Centre and Jonathan is the MD of BE.Spoke, which is part of BE.Offices, and both companies were winners in the FlexSA Awards last November. So it seemed a fitting idea to get them both in to ask questions. And I think Jonathan has gone, so we will ask him questions on another occasion. And Sallie and I will keep having a chat. So Sallie, do you want to tell us a bit about your business? I'm sure many people know you, but I'm sure there are some that don't. It'd be good to hear about the business centres that you run.
Okay, well, good morning, Jane, and so I'm sorry that Jonathan's not technically with us. Maybe he'll catch up a little bit. So for those people that don't know me, I started Portal Business Centres 28 years ago, which is actually now feels a bit frightening to think about that length of time. Over the years, we started out in Warrington, and now we have 3 locations. So the other 2 are based in Bromborough on the Wirral and Ellesmere Port, also in the northwest. So we've got, just to give a brief overview of the portfolio, we've got a total of about 37,000 square foot lettable, 90 offices and capacity for about 400 workstations. And I'm sure that's going to change in the coming weeks as we look more at social distancing, but that's where we've been at previously. I have, over the years, been a keen member of the BCA, as it was, and also have sat on the board on 2 occasions. So there are a number of people in the industry who know my face through that. I also, sort of whilst I was on the board, I was there to represent the independents within the industry. And we did form at one point a focus group of independents, and we still meet quarterly. And that's, we actually had a chat this week as well, which has been great because actually you just get a feeling that you're not on your own. Other people are going through the same experiences. And I have to say, we were absolutely delighted to win our first award last year, which was the Business Centre of the Year for our newest centre. And that was in the category 1 to 6 centres. So that's just a brief overview of us.
Okay, and Jonathan, can you hear now?
Jane, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can, yeah. You just want to tell us a bit about BE.Spoke and BE.Offices.
Sure. So I apologise, everyone, for the technical challenges. I suppose it epitomises some of the challenges of working from home. Yeah, so BE.Spoke is part of the BE.Offices group of companies. Together, we form BE.Offices, which is our traditional serviced office arm, BE.Spoke, which caters to larger corporates and multinationals, where we provide customized space on flexible terms. And for our more creative customers, we have a brand, Headspace. And combined, they account for about, well, just under 1 million square feet of space across the UK, in London, but also in places like Southampton, Belfast, Birmingham, Manchester, Milton Keynes, Basingstoke. And we have a wide range of clients. So it's quite exciting that we have this diverse portfolio servicing a huge range of clients as well. Thanks for having me on, by the way.
Okay, no, thank you. So just to say to everyone that's joined, we have got a chat function on this, which you're welcome to add any questions to, and I'll try and pick up on those as we go through or at the end. But just to start with some questions, and perhaps to Jonathan, whilst this is working at the moment, what have you found to be the main challenges over the last few weeks, and what support have you been giving to clients?
Yeah, I found that really challenging personally and professionally. Funny enough, just before this call, I remember, Jane, that in 2003, 2002, I was living in Hong Kong, and that was when the SARS epidemic broke out. And maybe it's because I was a lot younger then, but this one is obviously much more serious, just from a death rate and an infectious point of view. So this has been quite profound. I didn't anticipate the severity of the sort of outcomes that this has had, both professionally and personally. We felt that communication is really important during this difficult time. So we're in constant communication through our heads of departments with our customer base. But equally, BE employs more than 300 staff ourselves. So it's really important. The health and well-being of our staff, as is the health and well-being of our customers, is really at the fore, and we're constantly in communication with them. I have to say, our HR teams, led by Jamie Banton and Naz Sadiq, have done an incredible job, because it's a huge effort when you're dealing with that many people. So we're communicating all the time, and we'll continue to do so.
Okay. And Sallie, what have you found as the main challenges of the last? I suppose it is only about 6 weeks, isn't it? 7 weeks. It feels quite a lot longer now. But what have you been doing over that time with clients and staff as well?
Well, I think the weeks are starting to merge into continuation. Let's put it that way. I think initially there was a huge flurry of workload to get those of our clients that wanted to work from home still take advantage of the technology that we have within the centres, so particularly telephones and so on, to get them up and working from home, and actually to get my team up and working with the switchboards from home, which has worked fantastically well. So that was a huge bonus, and our suppliers have been great with that, helping us through that. I think I agree with Jonathan. The biggest thing with our clients and the staff has been communication. We're a small enough business for me to be able to sort of have some weekly updates with the clients by email, but also one-to-one conversations. And it's been very much a time to listen, to understand what their needs are, what their anxieties have been. And similarly for the staff, I mean, I agree again with Jonathan, the well-being and the health of the staff, we have actually had to furlough most of our receptionists and our cleaning staff, because we're in leased buildings, so we're still having cleaning done in communal areas. But I think for me as a small business, one of the things has been the workload, first of all, of trying to go through the correct process, deal with people respectfully, to furlough them, to make sure that they're comfortable about it, to know that their jobs are still there. And I think after that, the next big step for us was getting the small business rates grant. Most of our clients were eligible for it, and 2 of our sites, everybody who was eligible has now got it. So we've just got a couple of tail enders at the 3rd site. So that has been a huge bonus, but a lot of hard work. And it bears back to 2008, actually, when we split all the units down for assessment. And now actually all those clients have been able to take advantage of that. So so that was a huge bonus, but it has been workload. So that's it.
Yeah, and I know a lot of operators have spent an awful lot of time over the last few weeks trying to support clients on the small business grants, and that has proved a lot of challenges in different ways. On your own staff front, is there anything that either of your companies have been doing to enable interaction between staff in different ways, or has it been more focused on your communications to them?
So if you don't mind if I jump in here, from our point of view, I think Sallie and I will share some similar experiences, but also have some unique insights just because of the scale of the businesses, but some will be common themes. But we have a very vibrant events schedule within all our buildings, actually, for our communities. And we've continued those on a virtual basis, so they go out to our customers, whether it's yoga sessions or cake baking or some mindfulness tools, whatever it might be. We've continued that where possible in the virtual world. And again, we've extended that to our staff because we think it's critical. During this time, our managers have been in touch with them and on a personal note, and then we've had company Zoom calls, which we will continue to do. And I think with the announcement coming on Sunday, we're starting to gear up now that level of communication in terms of what are the next steps in returning to the workplace. Since the lockdown, actually, or just as the lockdown was coming into force, we created a steering committee to start talking about some of the issues Sallie mentioned. So firstly, how could we help our customers seamlessly continue to work from home? So we offered them, call forwarding services, seamless internet access, etc. Now we've got to start thinking about returning to the workplace, and that's a huge job. So we meet every day, the steering committee, on conference calls to plan that re-entry into the workplace.
So that probably brings us nicely onto that area, particularly, and I think everyone's attention is now going to what happens next. And I think we're still at the beginning of the end of it, but it is definitely turning to life after lockdown and what we can do. So it'd be good to hear what preparations you're making to enable staff and clients to return to their workplace with confidence, because that's going to be the key word, isn't it? So Sallie, what are you doing in that area?
Well, I totally agree, Jane. It is with confidence, and it's how we communicate that, both to our staff, because that's the most important thing initially, is that they come back and they feel comfortable dealing with clients, and that actually then the clients also feel comfortable coming into the communal spaces, and that we've put processes and guidelines in place to help them through that process. So a bit like Jonathan was just saying, I've spent the last probably just over a week, 10 days, dipping into webinars. We actually use a company called Peninsula for our health and safety and our HR. And they put together a fantastic webinar last Friday, which gave me some great pointers. And actually just listening to other people in the industry. I mentioned that the small group of people that I network with as other independents, it's adapting to your individual centres as well, and the basis of the clients or the base of clients that are in there, listening to their needs. And our newest centre, the one that was the won the award, for example, we actually have wide corridors there. We have 2 wings. We've got a big atrium reception. So actually, it's very easy to create those distances, and looking at then putting some other policies behind that, and sharing the guidelines. Been communicating to them what we're doing, how we're preparing, what the next step will be. So next week we're actually being in the centres. We're trying to get all our maintenance work up to date. Other bits and pieces that we had scheduled to happen, perhaps over the next 2 months, we're bringing a little bit of that forward so that we don't have to worry about social distancing from that. And then obviously communicating those policies and guidelines to people.
Okay. Jonathan, you touched a little on this, but is there other things that you can add to the physical preparations maybe that you're making? And
yeah, I didn't realize I was going to become an expert in sort of health and safety, sanitization, deep cleaning, but you can ask me anything now. I'm almost well versed in this. I think, what's really interesting is, as a sector, and Sallie alluded to this, we're really good actually at sharing, policies and ideas that we're looking to implement. So if anyone has any questions afterwards, they're more than happy. I'm more than happy for them to reach out to us if they'd like any advice on any measures that we're implementing. And I've been speaking to other operators, and it's a great community. It always has been actually, but I think this just exemplifies that. So in terms of practical steps, really it's about heightened cleaning and sanitization regimes. So we have within the group over 120, I think, dedicated cleaners. These are employed by BE on a daily basis, and last year they clocked up over 150,000 hours in our buildings through night cleaning and day cleaning. And we anticipate this is going to increase considerably over this COVID period, and then probably even well after that. In terms of practical steps, we've started a process of intense deep cleaning. We're purchasing fogging machines, which are the ones you might see TfL deploying on tube lines, and the NHS and other institutions will use these. And these act for 30 days. You can still sanitize the surfaces during those 30 days with normal cleaning, but it will kill the virus for a 30-day period. We're deploying things like thermal imaging cameras in buildings that we own. So in our portfolio, we have 22 buildings and 17 are leases. The other 5 are freeholds. So we're able to deploy these in the receptions of those freeholds. But we're also talking to the landlords about how we can work with them in terms of temperature checking on entry. We already had a huge range of hand sanitizers, but we've ordered a ton more, and they're going to be wall mounted and freestanding, non-touch hand sanitizers. You know, the list goes on. There's a huge amount of wayfinding and signage we've invested in. And this is a significant capital investment, but we feel it's absolutely essential. Sneeze screens for all our reception desks. And then we've ordered a lot of perspex barriers to sit between workstations to protect our customers and our staff. And I could go on and on and on and bore you senseless with this information, but it really is a complex task. And we're really lucky to have very talented and experienced health and safety experts within the business who are really driving this through and lending their expertise, because I joke that I'm an expert in this. I'm certainly not. And it's quite a complex field. But in some senses, actually, Jane, I think this is quite interesting from a sector point of view. Most customers would never be able to deal with the kind of auditing and general requirements to deliver this kind of health and safety regime. And I think it just shows how powerful we are as a sector in terms of our customer support to clients who occupy our spaces.
Yeah, no. And on the issue of becoming expert, I think all of us have learned things that we just would never expected to need to learn about over the last few weeks, and feel that we're a lot better informed about certain areas.
Well, I certainly haven't appreciated that the fogging actually lasted for 30 days. So I'm learning as well this morning. So yeah. Thank you.
I don't know whether either of you have areas of co-working space in your centres. And I know that that's an issue that's coming up a lot in terms of whether, particularly from a media perspective, who perhaps view flexible workspace as really meaning co-working space, when of course we know it's much broader than that. But whether that's an area that is likely to be able to continue, and is it possible to adapt those areas to make it viable for people to still take a desk or two in space? Is that something that either of you have any experience of yet, or have any thoughts on?
We don't really have, because of our location, or locations, it's not something that there's a high demand for. So we don't have a lot of co-working. We have had more of what we would call breakout spaces, and we do have more of a shared office than co-working. So in those areas, we're actually quite comfortable that we can implement policies that mean that people can carry on using them by just removing chairs, putting greater space in there, and so on. So it's not going to be a huge impact, I don't think, to the way that our centres are used at the moment. There would be more restriction on it. I think what would be more interesting in the longer term is actually how co-working space is used. And it might well be that sort of larger corporates, public sector, actually look to take smaller offices to provide their own overflow space, to provide that distance, and use that for hot desking, than perhaps a sort of everybody coming into, lots of individuals coming in to use a co-working space. So I think there's certainly opportunities in there for us as an industry, but I think it will change the way we work in some of those spaces.
Yeah. Jonathan, is there anything that you would like to add on that area of co-working space? And
well, yeah. I mean, I think this is a really important point, and I actually echo Sallie's comments there. Like her, we have very limited what I would call pure co-working in our portfolios. We never really have gone down that route. We do have an amazing array of collaborative spaces and communal spaces that people can access, like roof terraces and gyms and event spaces. We see this as critical to our offering, but we've never gone down the route of the pure co-working offering. And I think it's really shone a light as you started, I think, the question with Jane, on that element of the sector. So there's a lot of press, not just property press, but also mainstream media, questioning the sort of hygiene and the standards around high dense areas where many people are sharing communal areas such as kitchens and ice machines and drink stations and things like that. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of scrutiny around that. And I think some of it actually is very important that we have this debate, because I think for a long time, many of us in the industry have been questioning the concept of very high dense offices with limited natural light or bad airflow. And we feel fundamentally that that element of the offering is really, really important from a customer perspective. So I think if there's anything positive that will come out of COVID, I think there'll be a greater focus on the quality of workspace in terms of things like natural light, air quality, well-being, wellness. And that is something we should take as a positive when we do come out of this situation. Yeah. You must remember too, though, eventually, and hopefully sooner rather than later, there will be a vaccine, and it'll be interesting to see how short our memories are and whether we just go back to the way things were. But I think fundamentally there will be some sea change, particularly around things like certification of space when it comes to health and well-being and safety.
Yeah. And Jonathan, perhaps you could just pick up on one of the questions that's come through on the chat thing from Donna, who's asked where you think our responsibility ends in terms of customers' own space. And you talked a bit about the screens that you were getting, but are you seeing that as for customers to make that decision on whether they want to get screens and other mechanisms in place?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, actually. You know, how much do we legislate and how much is this a consultative process? And going back to the point I raised earlier, many of us may be landlords ourselves and the asset owner, the ultimate asset owner, but many of us may not be. And where we're not, you can't then instigate measures without the consent, obviously, of the superior landlord when it comes to things like communal spaces, you know, the main reception points, etc., which are common parts of the building. But where you do control the areas, I think the answer is probably to do as much as you physically can to give those customers the comfort they're all craving, by the way. Many customers are extremely anxious and their staff are extremely anxious about coming back to work. So I think it's about providing that level of comfort and consulting with your customers. I don't think it's about necessarily instigating a huge regime change without their input and buy-in, because their staff are going to be coming back to spaces that are radically different to what they were before. The only caveat to that, I would say, and particularly in cities like London, but other main cities and hubs, is that it's not necessarily the office space that's going to be the center of the contamination or recontamination. You must also think about how do you get to your workspace. And when we look at places like London and you look at the tube system, for example, there are huge challenges around that before you even get to your desk. So I think it's incumbent on us to do everything we possibly can and more when it comes to raising standards. But you can never have an entirely 100% sterile workplace. It just cannot happen. We eventually, I'm craving going back to the office for that kind of collaboration piece. I don't want to be 6 foot away from all my colleagues. They may want to be 6 foot away from me, but I don't want to be away from my colleagues. All my really important work is what I would refer to as human work, where I need to be, face to face with my customers, my clients, my partners, my work colleagues. So I'm craving that point. But in the interim, like Sallie indicated, there are measures you can do to reduce that close proximity. And that's what we're going to be doing for the short term, no doubt.
Thank you. Sallie, is there anything that you, particularly those communications with your clients on how their return to the workspace might go?
Well, we've just simply been asking what's going to make them comfortable, asking for responses from them, trying to facilitate and make them feel more confident that the things that we have looked at, and most of the things that have been brought up we have looked at, but we can never cover everything. And they seem to be, at the present, quite comfortable with the way that we're going. I think it's quite interesting as an independent, but also a regional centre, that we still have a legacy of larger desks. So we're not as densely populated as perhaps some offices in city centres are. So we do benefit from that. We still have opening windows. So fresh air and all of that is a bonus for us. And I think we're just talking to people about, do you want us to help you move things around, create a better layout? In fact, I've had somebody on the phone this morning where we had a brief discussion about screens. And I think for smaller ones, just coming back to the element of how much do we do for our clients? It's a question of also how much is commercially viable for the smaller independents to do for them. I personally couldn't afford to fit Perspex screens for all of my clients. That would have a huge impact on our commerciality, but it would also, there are other ways of doing that. I've got a client, the one I spoke to this morning, who's in a big office. He's got more than enough room to have 4 meters between everybody that he works with in there. So actually, once we talked it through, he was very happy with that. And it is that listening, understanding, and providing solutions. And that's something that we're all really good at in this industry. So, do what we're good at and keep talking to them. And that's what I've been doing.
Yeah, and just picking up there, Sallie, on another question that's just been typed in. Have any of your customers been requesting rent-free periods or other kind of help? Is there anything that you could share on that? And I know this is a challenge that everybody has had and have been approaching it in different ways.
Well, I've yet to meet somebody that hasn't been asked about that. I think this comes back actually to a point you touched on right at the beginning, Jonathan, as to how this has affected us personally as well. And the last couple of weeks, because I put the effort into talking to everybody individually, I found actually it's quite draining, because you start to get to the point where you want to be positive with your clients, you want to give them a solution, you want to listen to what their problems are and understand how we can work best with them, because one shoe doesn't fit all with this. We have had to look at helping various people in different ways. That might be a rent holiday, a discount. For other people, and this is the thing that isn't talked about very much, other people's businesses, there are a few of them, it's not just one or two, where the business has improved during this period. So to give you a very simple example, we do a telephone answering service for a client who does ceiling products for driveways. His business has gone through the roof whilst everybody's at home, and we're now answering more calls for him than we've ever done. So, with those elements of this aren't getting talked about either. There is a big fluctuation in how it's affected businesses. So I think you have to listen to what they want at the moment and try and work through what's commercially viable for them and you. And I didn't say at the beginning, but we lease 2 of our buildings we own. So obviously the commercial offerings that we can give to those people varies a bit as well. I don't know how you find that, Jonathan, with the buildings you have.
It's an interesting debate actually about, where do models go from here? I'm talking about operator models. So, is the freehold model the best route to market? Because in times of crisis like this, you're potentially more protected. And certainly one of the other debates that's come up very, very strongly at the moment is this concept of, are there going to be more partnership arrangements between operators of space and the ultimate asset owner? So will there be more turnover leases agreed? Will there be more JVs and management agreements coming out of the back of COVID? And they were already happening anyway pre-COVID, but it does seem like being vested with your owner, with your building owner, could be a sensible route, so that you share in the upside when the good times come. But when crises like this happen, it's easier to have open discussions with your landlord. So it'd be interesting to monitor that over the next coming weeks and months. But to go back to the original question, like Sallie, we've had conversations with clients around rent. There's no question about it. We're not immune to this. I think what's quite interesting is that our average length of stay is 3 years and 11 months with our customers. So many of our center managers and our center teams and our staff know the individuals very well. So they're able to have those very open and honest conversations. It goes back to the communication piece. Everyone is struggling. Sallie, you're right. There may be a few people whose businesses are doing slightly better, but the majority of people are struggling. And we need to work together to get through this crisis.
Yeah, I think we very definitely need to work together on it. And this idea of sharing is it's what we've always done as an industry, and I think we're doing it well now.
Yeah, no, it's certainly, and I've had a lot of conversations with a variety of our members over the last few weeks, and I think everyone has as well been very, very helpful in being willing to share experience with each other, because this is a similar problem across the UK. And I think the point about the huge variety of clients that you have is a really interesting one as well. And it's also meant that for some people it's been really important to be able to keep centres open and operating, because they've got businesses that are running services that are key at the moment to the situation. Just looking a bit internally and looking ahead, how do you think it's going to be as you start bringing your teams back together again? And obviously some will, as you said, been furloughed, and others have been got very used to working from home. Do you think that this is going to be a smooth transition back, or do you think there's going to be particular challenges? Jonathan, do you want to start on that?
I think individuals are going to be coping differently. I certainly go through periods of being quite despondent and then being quite uplifted. So no doubt some people are struggling in this environment. And I think the readjustment to going back to the office is going to be challenging, but I think we will be supporting all of our staff. And we have excellent health cover, which includes an array of opportunities to address mental health, for example. And we're going to make those widely available to all of our teams who require it. I think many people will want to go back. I think the experiment of the whole world working from home has been really interesting to watch. And there's no doubt that for many people, this is a successful way of doing business. But I think what's going to be most interesting is how this then plays out long term. And what I foresee is that employees will be much more empowered to make choices about where they work. And I don't think it's a binary debate about, do you work from home or do you work from the office? I think there were a myriad of options in between those two solutions. And actually this will benefit our segment long term, because we're able to offer those third-party sites that companies, and particularly corporate real estate, can access as they downsize their HQs, which they're all going to be doing, by the way. And approaching a more hub and spoke feel to their real estate planning. And to Sallie's point about the regions, I think we're going to see very exciting activity in the regions as a result of this. But bottom line is some staff will manage better than others. We're already starting to notify staff who are on furlough that there could be a chance that this will start to be released, subject to the government guidelines and announcement on Sunday.
Okay. Sallie, on the staffing point?
Well, it's something that's been in the back of my mind, and I have talked to my management team about as because they're all working and working almost on overload a bit because of the sheer volume and diversity of the things we're adjusting to and adapting to. And I think then to bring back people who've had time at home, yes, they've had anxieties, but they've also perhaps had time with children, time to do things. I think there's quite a disparity in where our experiences have been during this period. And I think that that needs to, I'm hopefully trying to encourage a couple of my team to take some holiday before they come back in, because I think we will all have very different experiences. And if we don't share them and bring them back together and talk through them, I think we can end up with problems. And I think you talked, Jonathan, about this sort of, I call it heightened awareness of the emotions that we're going through, because the good days and the bad days seem to be sort of more extreme than they have been normally. And I think it's made all of us think about stress, anxiety, and so on. And taking that forward, I think that you're right about the way that people will choose to work. I think people will be more empowered in the future. And I don't think it's the end of the office, per se, and everybody's going to go to working from home. I think they will choose how they commute. I think, and I think that's what will be good for the regions. I think that they will want to have some days at home. They're enjoying the time with family more. They're realizing that there isn't as much stress on those days. But equally, and I look at my own staff for this, we're a service industry. We deal with people. You can't deal with people all the time by a Zoom screen. And actually, the things that I've done on it do affect the eyesight as well after a while. You do feel the drain, and you want to be with, you want to feel the atmosphere. You want to collaborate. You want to bounce ideas off people. And sometimes you actually have to have the physical presence to do that. But I don't necessarily think it needs to be all the time. So I think there will be a lot of change to come. I think we are the flexible office industry, and we always create opportunity out of that change. And I think, you know, this is another time that we will be doing it.
Yeah, and that seems a very positive note. And Jonathan, just to wrap up on that, and there's a good article in the Times today about how the return to offices and how in reality people really don't want to be working from home for forever and ever, because there are so many benefits to be drawn from being in an office and working with other people. Do you have any thoughts on that, about the importance of people being able to work in office space and not just moving to a position where we just work from home on a permanent basis?
Yeah, I read that article, funny enough, this morning. It was quite funny. I believe that concept of choice. I really fundamentally do, actually. I think it's so important, and it's going to drive the way forward. So I think we'll see a distributed workforce now, as big corporations constantly are declaring over the last couple of weeks that they're no longer going to place, 7,000 of their staff in one building. I think you'll see distributed workforces appearing everywhere. And that's really positive. But I think many of them will crave the opportunity to be in a workspace with their colleagues and with their clients and with partners, as I mentioned earlier, because that's what we are. We're pack animals, we're humans. And I think many of us actually fundamentally need that. And some work collaboratively simply needs to take place in the flesh. So those rumors of the office being dead, I think, like Mark Twain's death, are greatly exaggerated. Long live the office. I just think we need to provide the right solutions, underpinned by the kind of hospitality services that we're so good at doing, and making sure they're incredibly safe and environments to be in. And we're capable of doing that. Very few people are capable of delivering that kind of expertise. So yeah, long live the office.
That's a very good note to end on. So thank you very much to Jonathan and Sallie for joining us. Our next webinars we're going to hold 2 webinars on the date of what would have been the Flexible Space Association's conference, Tuesday the 19th of May, which sadly we've had to cancel. But there will be 2 webinars taking place with Neil Usher on one, who would have been a keynote speaker, and then in the afternoon we're going to be hearing from Jonathan Williams from Instant and Will Kinnear from GKRE. So there'll be more details of those. Please look out for those and register. But thank you everyone for joining today. Thank you.
Thank you for asking me.
Thank you.